The conference room was filled with an oppressive silence. The tension in the air was thick, suffocating. No one dared to move, let alone speak. The only sound that echoed through the massive glass-walled space was the sharp, clipped voice of Larry Carter, the formidable CEO of Carter Enterprises. "This is unacceptable," Larry growled, his piercing blue eyes scanning the room like daggers. He slammed a thick report onto the long mahogany table, making some of the junior executives flinch. "We've invested millions into this project, and what do we have to show for it? Absolutely nothing." Across the table, a middle-aged executive swallowed hard. "Sir, we underestimated the market's response. The projections—" "Don't give me excuses, James," Larry snapped, cutting him off mid-sentence. His jaw tightened, his expression hard as stone. "Carter Enterprises is not a charity. We don't hope for success, we create it. And yet, here I am, looking at a quarterly loss that shouldn't even exist." The room remained silent. No one dared to challenge him, no one except Lauren Mitchell, a younger but sharp-minded financial strategist. She had been with the company for 3 years and had seen Larry in many moods, but this level of frustration was something else. Lauren folded her arms, her voice steady but firm. "Sir, with all due respect, this isn't just about numbers. This failure isn't because people didn't work hard enough. Maybe the issue isn't just about profit margins. Maybe it's because we pushed too hard without considering the people involved." Larry's gaze snapped to her like a hawk spotting prey. A flicker of something dark, annoyance, maybe even amusement, flashed across his face. "People," he repeated, his tone laced with sarcasm. "You think I should prioritize emotions over results, over billions in revenue?" Lauren didn't back down. "I think a company that only chases profits without considering the human element is doomed to fail eventually. Numbers matter, but people do too." A muscle in Larry's jaw twitched. He let out a slow, controlled breath before leaning forward, resting his hands on the table. His voice was softer now, but somehow even more chilling. "Let me make something clear," he said. "We don't exist to make people feel comfortable. We exist to dominate the market. If you want to run a charity, Lauren, I suggest you look elsewhere." A tense silence followed. No one spoke. Lauren clenched her fists under the table but said nothing more. Larry straightened his suit, his patience worn thin. "This meeting is over," he announced. "I expect a real solution on my desk by tomorrow morning, not excuses." With that, he turned on his heel and strode out of the room, his mind still seething with frustration. The hallway outside the conference room was empty, save for the faint hum of office chatter in the distance. Larry's polished shoes clicked against the sleek marble floor as he walked, his mind racing. The meeting had been a disaster. The numbers didn't lie. If the company didn't bounce back fast, even his reputation as a business genius wouldn't save him. His temples throbbed. He needed a moment, just a second to clear his head. He turned a corner and spotted the restrooms ahead. Without a second thought, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air was slightly cooler inside, and for a brief moment, he felt relief. He walked toward the sink, rolling up his sleeves. Then, a sound. A muffled sniffle. Larry's movements halted. His sharp eyes darted to the farthest corner of the restroom, and that's when he saw her. A young woman, curled up on the floor, her arms wrapped around herself. Her clothes were wrinkled, slightly torn, and there were faint traces of dirt on her exposed skin. Strands of dark hair fell over her face, hiding most of her features, but the slight trembling of her shoulders told him she was crying. She hadn't noticed him yet. Larry frowned, his mind quickly trying to make sense of the situation. What was she doing here? Was she a janitor? No. Her attire, though worn out, wasn't a uniform. He cleared his throat. The sound made the girl jolt. Her head snapped up, and for the first time, Larry saw her face. Big hazel eyes, filled with fear and unshed tears. A streak of dirt across her cheek, lips slightly parted in shock. She looked fragile, vulnerable. But there was something else beneath that fear, something defiant. "What?" Larry started, but the girl scrambled to her feet instantly, pressing herself against the wall as if expecting him to attack her. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice shaky but defensive. Larry narrowed his eyes. "I should be asking you that." The girl's breath hitched, and she quickly looked around, realization dawning on her. "Wait, this is—" She paled. "Oh my God, you're not supposed to be in here." Larry frowned. What was she talking about? This was the men's— He turned his head slightly, and that's when he saw the sign on the door behind him. Women's Restroom. For the first time in a long time, Larry Carter was speechless. Sophia Reed's heart pounded in her chest. Her hands instinctively gripped the fabric of her worn-out sweater as she pressed herself against the cold, tiled wall. The man standing in front of her, the one who had just walked into the women's restroom like he owned the place, was staring at her with narrowed, piercing blue eyes. His tailored suit, his expensive watch, the sharp confidence in his stance, it all screamed power and privilege, and that terrified her. "Who are you?" he demanded, his deep voice laced with suspicion. Sophia swallowed hard. Her mind raced for an answer, but all she could think about was how bad this looked. She was a nobody, a girl in tattered clothes crouching on the bathroom floor of a corporate skyscraper. He probably thought she was some thief, some criminal. She stammered, forcing herself to stand up. Her legs wobbled, but she straightened her back, trying to regain some dignity. With a shaky breath, she wiped at her tear-streaked face and lifted her chin. I was just sitting here. I wasn't doing anything wrong." Larry's eyes didn't soften. If anything, they grew colder. "You're trespassing," he stated bluntly. "How did you get in?" Sophia blinked. Trespassing? For a split second, she didn't know what to say, but then it clicked. He thought she had broken into the building, her stomach twisted with frustration. "I didn't break in," she snapped, crossing her arms even though her hands were trembling. I used to work here." Larry's gaze flickered over her, skepticism clear on his face. He scoffed. "You used to work here?" His tone made it sound like he didn't believe that for a second. "Yes," Sophia said, forcing herself to stand her ground. "I was an assistant in the finance department, but they laid me off last week, along with a dozen other people." Larry tilted his head slightly. He was still assessing her, still judging her. "If they laid you off, then what are you doing here now?" Sophia clenched her fists. She hated the way he was looking at her, like she was some pathetic stray dog that had wandered into his perfect little world. "I came back because I was supposed to get my last paycheck today," she admitted, voice tight. "But the HR office told me there were delays in processing it, and they wouldn't give me a straight answer. I've been trying to find another job all week, but I haven't had any luck." She swallowed, forcing herself to keep talking, even though the lump in her throat made it hard. "I was tired. I just needed a place to sit for a minute. That's all." Larry crossed his arms, unimpressed. "And you thought the women's restroom was the best place for that?" Sophia let out a short, bitter laugh. "Yeah, well, when you don't have an office, a house, or even money for a cup of coffee, you take what you can get." For a second, something flickered in Larry's expression, something unreadable, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. His posture remained rigid. His voice was as cold as ever. "So, you're saying you're homeless?" The bluntness of his words made Sophia flinch. Heat rose to her cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from anger. "No," she said through gritted teeth. "I still have an apartment, but if I don't get my paycheck soon, I won't for much longer." Larry exhaled through his nose, tilting his head slightly as he studied her. The disbelief was still there, but now there was something else in his eyes, something that annoyed her even more. Pity. "I can call security," he said. "They'll? Seriously?" Sophia cut him off, taking a step forward. "I just told you I worked here. I didn't steal anything. I didn't hurt anyone. And your first instinct is to call security?" Larry's jaw tensed. "I don't know you." "And I don't know you either," Sophia shot back. "But let me guess, you're some executive, right? Some rich guy who thinks anyone struggling must have done something wrong?" Larry's expression didn't change, but the sharpness in his eyes grew colder. You think you know me? I know your type, Sophia muttered, folding her arms. You sit in your fancy office, making decisions that ruin people's lives, and then act like it's just business. You've probably never had a day in your life where you worried about paying rent or where your next meal was coming from. A long, tense silence followed. Sophia could hear her own heartbeat. She could see the way Larry's fingers curled slightly at his sides. Then, without warning, her stomach growled. Loudly. The sound echoed in the quiet restroom, cushioning the tension like a glass dropped on concrete. Sophia stiffened. Larry's gaze flickered downward for a fraction of a second, toward her stomach, toward the way her arms instinctively wrapped around herself. He saw it, the exhaustion, the hunger, the way her body swayed slightly, as if she didn't even have the energy to stand properly. For the first time since they had met, he hesitated. His hand hovered over his phone like he was still considering calling security, but something in his face changed. He didn't press the button. Instead, he exhaled slowly, eyes still locked on her, and for the first time, Larry Carter didn't know what to do. The air outside was thick and humid, the heavy scent of rain clinging to the concrete walls of the towering skyscraper. The moment Larry stepped through the glass doors of Carter Enterprises, he felt the first few drops of rain land on his shoulder. Great. He glanced over at Sophia, who was trailing behind him with slow, reluctant steps. She pulled her thin, oversized sweater tighter around herself, as if it could shield her from the cold, but it was obvious she had nowhere to go. Larry knew this was no longer his problem. She wasn't his responsibility. And yet, he exhaled sharply, shaking his head at his own irritation. "You should leave," he said flatly. "The security guards might start asking questions if they see you hanging around here." Sophia let out a bitter laugh. "Right. Wouldn't want your precious company to be associated with someone like me, huh?" Larry clenched his jaw. He wasn't in the mood for another argument. "I gave you a chance to explain yourself," he said, his voice controlled but firm. "I didn't call security. That's more than most people in my position would have done," Sophia scoffed. "Wow. Should I say thank you? Should I be grateful that the great Larry Carter showed an ounce of human decency?" He turned to face her, his blue eyes sharp. "I don't expect gratitude. I expect common sense. You need to get out of the rain and figure out what's next." Sophia's eyes flickered to the sky. The drizzle had turned into a steady downpour, soaking her sweater within seconds. She shivered but refused to move. Larry checked his watch, then sighed. Why was he still standing here? "Do you have anywhere to go?" he asked, his tone clipped, almost impatient. Sophia hesitated, just for a second, but that brief pause told him everything. She didn't. She had nothing. Larry inhaled slowly, running a hand through his rain-dampened hair. He didn't have time for this. He had an entire company to run, a crisis to fix, and a boardroom full of executives waiting for answers. And yet, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. Without a word, he took out a few crisp $100 bills and held them out to her. "Here," he said, his voice neutral. "Find a place to stay for the night. Get a meal. Figure things out." Sophia's gaze dropped to the money. Then, slowly, she looked back up at him, and for the first time, Larry saw it clearly. The flicker of pain, of pride, of something far deeper than just frustration. Her shoulders squared, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She didn't take the money. Instead, she glared at him as if he had just insulted her entire existence. "I don't want your pity," she said, her voice low but sharp as a knife. Larry frowned. "It's not pity, it's logic. You need money, I have money. Take it. I'd rather starve," she snapped. Larry exhaled through his nose, his patience thinning. "Don't be ridiculous." Sophia took a step closer, her hazel eyes burning with something fierce, unyielding. "You think money fixes everything, don't you?" she spat. "That you can just throw a couple of bills at a problem and walk away guilt-free?" Larry's jaw tightened. What the hell was her problem? "This isn't about guilt," he said coolly. "It's about survival, and right now, you don't have a lot of options." Sophia let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, I have options. One of them is telling you to take your money and shove it." Larry stared at her, incredulous. She was standing in the pouring rain, her clothes drenched, her body trembling from the cold. She had no job, no security, no clear path forward, and yet she was choosing to struggle rather than accept help from someone like him. Ridiculous. "Fine," he said, slipping the bills back into his wallet. "Have it your way." Sophia turned away from him, crossing her arms against the cold. She shivered, but she still refused to move. Larry should have walked away. He should have gone straight to his car, driven home, and forgotten about her entirely. But for some reason, he couldn't. There was something about the way she stood there, so stubborn, so goddamn proud, despite having nothing. There was something about the way she looked at him, not with admiration, not with gratitude, but with disdain. No one looked at him like that. No one challenged him like that. And somehow that made it impossible to forget her. With an exasperated sigh, Larry turned and walked away. But even as he left, Sophia Reed stayed in his mind. The next morning, Larry Carter was on his usual route to work, stepping out of his sleek black car in front of the upscale cafe where he always grabbed his morning espresso. The world around him was as predictable as ever. Businessmen in tailored suits, assistants rushing to grab coffee orders, the scent of roasted beans mixing with the crisp morning air. But something wasn't predictable that morning. Through the glass window of the cafe, he saw her. Sophia Reed. She was sitting outside on a cold metal bench, her arms wrapped around herself, trying to keep warm. Her clothes were still damp from the rain the night before, and her face was drawn, exhausted. She was talking to the cafe manager, her voice just loud enough to carry through the partially open door. "Please, I can work any shift. Mornings, nights, weekends." "I'm sorry," the manager said, already shaking his head. "We're not hiring right now," Sophia tried again. "I don't need much. Look, lady, I told you, we're not hiring." The manager's voice turned sharper, irritated. "Maybe try somewhere else." Sophia swallowed hard, nodding quickly. "Yeah, okay, thanks anyway." She turned away before the manager could slam the door, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. Larry didn't know why, but the sight of it, the frustration in her eyes, the sheer desperation she was trying to hide, made something tighten in his chest, and before he could think better of it, he was already walking toward her. Sophia felt his presence before she even turned around. That same aura, cold, authoritative, maddeningly confident, was impossible to ignore. She sighed, rubbing at her temple. "What do you want, Carter?" Larry tilted his head, hands in his pockets. "So now I'm Carter," he mused. "No longer some rich guy who throws money at problems?" Sophia rolled her eyes, too tired to argue. "Seriously, why are you here?" Larry didn't answer right away. He glanced at the cafe's closed door, then back at her. "You were looking for a job?" Sophia crossed her arms. "What, are you stalking me now?" His lips twitched, but the amusement didn't quite reach his eyes. "Trust me, you're not that interesting," Sophia scoffed. "Wow, you sure know how to charm a woman." Larry ignored the sarcasm. "Come work for me." Silence. Sophia blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "What?" "I need an assistant," Larry said simply. "Temporary, just for a few weeks." Sophia let out a sharp laugh. "You? Need an assistant? Don't you already have a dozen people running around doing your every command?" "They're incompetent," Larry said, as if that explained everything. Sophia stared at him. "And let me guess, you think I'm competent?" Larry shrugged. "I think you're desperate." Sophia's expression hardened. She hated that he was right. She hated that she was desperate, but more than that, she hated the idea of working for him, for a man who saw the world in profit margins and stock values. "No," she said firmly. "I don't need your charity." Larry's jaw clenched. "It's not charity, it's a job." "It's your job," she shot back, "which means I'd be working under you." "That's how employment works, yes," Larry deadpanned. Sophia exhaled sharply, running a hand through her tangled hair. "Look, I appreciate the—" She stopped herself, gritting her teeth. No, she didn't appreciate it, not one bit. "I just don't want to work for you." Larry tilted his head, eyes narrowing slightly. "Because you don't like me?" Sophia let out a dry laugh. Because I don't trust you." Something flickered in Larry's expression. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was something sharper, more calculated. He took a step closer. "Or," he said slowly, "because you don't trust yourself?" Sophia stiffened. "Excuse me?" Larry's gaze didn't waver. "You're too proud to admit you need help, so instead you lash out. You refuse anything that doesn't come on your own terms, even when it's in your best interest." Sophia's nails dug into her palms. "You don't know a damn thing about me. I know enough, and I know enough about you to say no." Larry let out a slow, measured breath. His patience was wearing thin. "Fine," he said. "Then let me put it this way. You need money, I need someone competent. I don't care if you like me. I don't care if you hate me. Take the job or don't. But stop acting like this is about morals when it's just your pride talking." Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Because damn it, he was right, and she hated that more than anything. Her fists clenched at her sides. She could say no, she could walk away. But where would she go? Back to wandering the streets? Back to nothing? The thought made her stomach churn. She didn't want to take his offer, but she didn't have a choice. She lifted her gaze, meeting Larry's cold, unyielding stare. "Fine," she muttered. "But don't think for a second that I'm grateful." Larry didn't flinch. "Trust me," he said dryly. "I never expected you to be." And just like that, their uneasy alliance began. Sophia's first day as Larry Carter's temporary assistant was, in a word, disastrous. It wasn't that she was incompetent, far from it. She was sharp, quick-witted, and had an uncanny ability to keep up with the rapid-fire chaos of Larry's schedule. But there was just one problem. She hated him. And Larry? He wasn't exactly making things easy either. "You're late!" Sophia barely had a chance to put her coffee down before Larry's voice cut through the air like a blade. She glanced at the sleek digital clock in his office. 8:02 a.m. She rolled her eyes. "Are you seriously mad about 2 minutes?" Larry didn't even look up from his laptop. "Yes." Sophia let out a slow breath, counting to 3 before she said something that would get her fired. Instead, she crossed her arms and leaned against his desk. "Would it kill you to say good morning like a normal human being?" Larry finally lifted his gaze, his expression unreadable. "If I wanted pointless small talk, I wouldn't have hired you." Sophia scoffed. "Right, because God forbid you act like a decent person for 5 seconds. Larry ignored her and went back to typing. "Cancel my 10 a.m. meeting with the investment firm. Reschedule it for next week." Sophia arched an eyebrow. "You do realize I don't have access to your calendar yet, right?" Larry's fingers paused on the keyboard. He let out an exasperated sigh before turning the laptop toward her. "Figure it out." Sophia stared at him for a long moment. This man. This insufferable, arrogant control freak of a man. But fine, 2 could play this game. She pulled the laptop closer, fingers flying across the keyboard as she navigated through his system. 30 seconds later, she looked up. "Done." Larry raised an eyebrow. "That fast?" Sophia smirked. "Told you I was competent." Larry studied her for a brief moment, then gave a short nod before returning to his work. No praise, no good job, just a nod. Typical. The longer Sophia worked with Larry, the more infuriatingly predictable he became. 7:30 a.m. sharp. He walked into the office, not a single hair out of place, his suit always impeccably pressed. 8 a.m. He started working, barking orders with the efficiency of a military commander. 12 p.m. He skipped lunch, every single day. Sophia hated to admit it, but the work itself wasn't bad. She actually enjoyed the fast pace, the problem-solving, the way Larry ran his empire with an almost machine-like precision. But the man himself? Still an unbearable control freak. And yet, there were moments, tiny, fleeting moments where she saw something else beneath the ice-cold exterior. It was around 11 p.m. when Sophia finally had enough. She had been dragged into staying late, something about an urgent business report that Larry refused to send without triple-checking every damn detail. She rubbed her eyes, glancing over at him. He was still typing, his face unreadable, tension etched into his jaw. And then she realized he looked exhausted. not just physically but in a way that went deeper, a kind of weariness that no amount of money or power could fix. Before she could stop herself, she spoke. "You ever think about taking a break?" Larry didn't even look up. "This is a billion-dollar company. If I take a break, things fall apart," Sophia frowned. "I think you just like controlling everything." Larry finally looked at her, his blue eyes sharp. "You say that like it's a bad thing." Sophia held his gaze. "It is. You're human, Carter, not a machine." A brief silence stretched between them, and then the corner of Larry's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "You sound concerned," he said. Sophia scoffed, grabbing her bag. "Don't get excited. I just don't want my boss dropping dead before I get paid." Larry let out a short, amused breath. Noted. As the days passed, something shifted between them. Yes, they still fought, daily, but the fights started feeling less like battles and more like banter. Yes, Larry was still a control freak, but Sophia realized that his perfectionism came from pressure, not arrogance. And yes, Sophia still drove Larry insane, but there was something about her, something unapologetically real, that made him start looking forward to their arguments. Neither of them would admit it yet. But something was changing. The storm hit Carter Enterprises like an earthquake. Headlines splashed across every major business news outlet. "Carter enters under investigation. Insider fraud exposed. Larry Carter's empire at risk. Millions lost in shady deals." The news spread like wildfire. Stockholders panicked. Clients pulled back. Board members demanded answers. And at the center of it all was Larry Carter, standing in his office, watching the chaos unfold around him. His company, his entire legacy, was at stake. Sophia had never seen him like this before. For the past week, the Larry Carter she knew, the arrogant, cold, unshakable CEO, was nowhere to be found. Instead, he was a man consumed by stress, anger, and something dangerously close to doubt. She watched as he paced his office, his jaw clenched, his hands tight around the latest legal report. "They're saying I approved that contract," he muttered, his voice low and sharp. "That I signed off on illegal dealings. I never did." Sophia frowned. "Who did?" Larry exhaled harshly. "A deal like this doesn't happen without someone inside pulling the strings. But no one's talking. No one's admitting to anything." Sophia bit her lip. Something felt off about all of this, and she had a bad habit of following her instincts. That night, she started digging. It wasn't easy. The company's financial records were a labyrinth of documents, numbers, and signatures, but after hours of searching, she found something. A name. Liam Hendricks, one of Larry's trusted senior executives, a man who had been with the company for years. Sophia's stomach turned. If she was right, if Hendricks was the one behind this, then Larry was being framed for a scandal that could destroy him. She had to tell him. She never got the chance. Because the moment she stepped outside her apartment, a black car pulled up beside her. 2 men, dark suits, cold eyes. One of them grabbed her wrist. "Stay out of this." Sophia's heart pounded. "Let me go!" The man tightened his grip. "Drop whatever you're looking into. This isn't your fight." Sophia yanked her arm free, her voice shaking. "I don't know what you're talking about." The man leaned in, his voice a low warning. "Walk away, Miss Reed, or next time we won't be so polite." Then, just as quickly as they appeared, they were gone. Sophia barely made it to Larry's office before her legs gave out. She was shaking, from fear, from anger, from the sheer realization that she had just been threatened because of him. Larry turned as she stumbled inside. His eyes flickered with concern for just a second before he saw the bruises forming on her wrist, and then his expression changed. His entire body tensed, his jaw clenching, his usual cold demeanor cracking into something dangerously furious. "What the hell happened?" His voice was sharp, low, almost deadly. Sophia swallowed hard. Larry was in front of her in an instant, his hands gripping her shoulders. "Who did this to you?" She exhaled shakily. "I found out who's behind this. It's Hendricks. He set you up." Larry's eyes darkened. And? Sophia hesitated. And? Someone doesn't want me talking about it. Larry's grip tightened. His entire body was radiating anger now, but beneath it, beneath all the fury, was fear. Not for himself, for her. You should have come to me first, he muttered. You shouldn't have put yourself in danger. Sophia pulled back, her voice rising. I couldn't just sit back and watch them ruin you. Larry's eyes widened slightly at her outburst. Sophia's chest was heaving, her emotions finally breaking through. I don't care if you're some arrogant billionaire, Carter. I don't care if we fight every damn day. She swallowed, her voice trembling now. I couldn't let them do this to you. Silence. Larry stared at her, something unspoken flickering behind his cold exterior. For the first time, he saw it, really saw it. Sophia wasn't just doing this out of principle, she cared about him. And that realization? It changed everything. Carter Enterprises survived. After weeks of chaos, public scrutiny, and internal investigation, Larry finally exposed Hendricks as the mastermind behind the fraudulent deal. The evidence was undeniable. Hendricks was arrested, the company's reputation was salvaged, and Larry walked away unscathed. But not unchanged. Because somewhere in the middle of it all, Sophia Reed had changed him. Larry found her exactly where he expected her to be, packing up her desk on her last day. She didn't notice him at first, too busy shoving her few belongings into a worn-out bag, but when she looked up and saw him standing there, a flicker of something unreadable crossed her face. He didn't speak right away. He just stood there, watching her with that calculating intensity she had grown used to, and then, finally, "Thank you." Sophia blinked, caught off guard. For what? Larry's gaze didn't waver. For saving my company. Sophia huffed out a soft, humorless laugh. I didn't do it for you. Larry tilted his head slightly. No? She swallowed, gripping the strap of her bag. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Silence stretched between them. Then Larry took a step closer. I should have listened to you, he admitted, from the beginning. Sophia glanced away, her heart hammering against her ribs. She should be happy. She had done what she came to do. She had survived, and now she was free. So why did the thought of walking away from him feel so damn painful? Larry saw it, the hesitation in her eyes, the way her fingers tightened around the strap of her bag, like she was holding on to something she wasn't ready to let go of. And for the first time in his life, he didn't overthink. He just acted. In one swift motion, he grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward him. Sophia gasped, caught completely off guard as she collided against his chest. Her breath hitched. Larry, I don't want you to leave, he said, his voice lower, rougher. Sophia's heart stuttered. She opened her mouth, ready to argue, ready to push him away, and then he said it. I love you. Sophia froze. The words hit her harder than any argument they'd ever had. She searched his face, waiting for a smirk, a flicker of amusement, some kind of sign that he was joking. But he wasn't. His expression was serious, vulnerable in a way she had never seen before. Her heart clenched. Larry, she whispered. But then the doubt crept in. What if this wasn't real? What if this was just gratitude, not love? She swallowed hard. You're just saying that because I helped you, because you feel... Larry cut her off. No. His grip on her wrist tightened, not in restraint, but in desperation. This isn't about what you did for me, he said, voice raw. It's about what you are to me. Sophia's throat tightened. Damn him. Damn him for making her want to believe it, but was she willing to take that risk? Or was she about to walk away from the best thing that had ever happened to her? For the first time in his life, Larry Carter hesitated. A week had passed since Sophia left. 7 days of silence. 168 hours of waiting for her to call, for her to come back, only to realize that she wouldn't, because she didn't believe him. She thought his love was temporary, just an emotion born out of gratitude, but she was wrong, and he was going to prove it. Sophia sat alone in a small corner of the city, a cup of untouched coffee growing cold in front of her. She had done everything she told herself she would. Moved on, started looking for new jobs, tried to forget about him, but no matter how hard she tried, Larry Carter was still in her head. The way he looked at her, the way he said those 3 words, the way she had wanted so badly to believe him, but was too scared to. She blinked back the sudden sting in her eyes, shaking her head. No, it was better this way. She wasn't going to— "You left." Sophia's heart stopped. She turned too quickly, her breath catching as she saw him standing there, Larry Carter, drenched from the rain, his usual perfectly pressed suit slightly wrinkled, his blue eyes burning as they locked onto hers. Sophia swallowed hard. "What are you doing here?" Larry didn't move, didn't blink. "Looking for you." Her chest tightened. "Larry, I love you." His voice was steady, certain. Sophia's breath hitched. "Larry, But he took another step forward. "All my life, I have only known how to run after money," he murmured, his voice softer now. "But you taught me something more important. Love." Sophia's throat tightened. She had spent so long pushing him away, believing he was incapable of love. But now, standing there in the rain, looking at him, really looking at him, she knew. He meant it. Tears welled in her eyes. She let out a shaky breath, her resolve crumbling, and then she ran to him. Larry barely had time to react before she crashed into his chest, arms wrapping around his neck, fingers gripping onto his shirt like she was afraid to let go. Larry let out a breathless chuckle, his arms immediately tightening around her waist, pulling her impossibly close. "You're an idiot," she mumbled against his shoulder. He smirked. "And you're impossible." She pulled back just enough to meet his gaze. His eyes, those cold, unreadable eyes she had once hated, were now full of something warmer, something real. Sophia smiled through her tears. "Kiss me, Carter." Larry's lips curled into a slow, dangerous smirk. "With pleasure." And then he kissed her, right there under the dim glow of the streetlights, with the rain falling softly around them. Larry Carter kissed Sophia Reed like she was the only thing that had ever mattered. And just like that, everything changed. Because this was just the beginning. And so, Larry Carter, the once cold-hearted CEO, and Sophia Reed, the stubborn, fearless woman who challenged him at every turn, found something neither of them had ever expected. Love. Not the kind that was fleeting, not the kind that was born out of gratitude or circumstance. Real love, the kind that changed people, the kind that made them better. Larry had spent his life chasing success, power, and wealth, believing that emotions were nothing more than distractions. But Sophia taught him that love was not a weakness. It was the one thing that made all the success in the world worth it. And as they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms under the soft glow of the city lights, one thing was certain. This was just the beginning of their story. Because sometimes, love finds you in the most unexpected places, even in the wrong restroom. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories. We bring you heartfelt, emotional stories that will stay with you long after the last word. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that stirs your soul. Until next time, keep believing in love, in change, and in the power of a single moment to transform everything. See you in the next story.